All right. Hello, everybody. It looks like we've got some people showing up already. So welcome to another episode of Luncheon with the Experts, a Carcinoid Cancer Foundation program brought to you by Tricera Therapeutics. My name is Rain Bennett. As many of you know, hopefully by now, I'm here every week. I'm your host, and I'm a filmmaker. And I've been working with the Carcinoid Cancer Foundation with CCF for almost 10 years. Crazy how time flies, making documentaries and treatment-based videos to help educate people and spread awareness about this disease, about neuroendocrine tumors. If you are one of our regulars on the series, you know the drill. Hi from Liberty Lake, hi from Chicago land. Yes, let us know where you are coming today from, where you are in the world. I say this probably every week, and I mean it. That's one of the best things about this show is really seeing how far it reaches. It blows my mind. We get people from all over the world. Before we get started with Luncheon with the Experts, we want to say a big thank you to Tricera Therapeutics. Without them, this program wouldn't exist. And if that name is new to you, it's because they have recently acquired Zermello from Lexicon Pharmaceuticals. Other than that, there will be no changes with how Zermello is carried out, but we want to thank them very much. We have a quick message from them that we say at the top of every program. And we just want to say that the opinions expressed by the guest presenters, as well as the questions asked by the audience, that you all at home, haven't been created or suggested by the sponsors. And CCF does not endorse or promote any of the views, opinions, or information provided in this presentation. Audience members, again, that's you, should not rely solely on the opinions or information expressed by the guest and should seek guidance and direction from their own medical advisors regarding any choices they make about their health and treatments. Now, that last part is really the takeaway. Generally, in Luncheon with the Experts, we cover a lot of ground sometimes. We talk about a lot of different aspects of this disease, but we don't know your specific cases. So by all means, don't go rogue and make any decisions without talking to your home team that does know your case. However, today is going to be an interesting episode. We have a unique guest, which I'm very excited about, and someone I can call a friend. Today, our guest is Steve Mazan. Steve, how are you, my friend?
Good. Hi, Rain. How you doing? Happy to be here. I'm a little nervous.
Uh-oh.
You mentioned that most of your guests are at lunch with the expert. I've never been called an expert in anything. So,
well, you got to be an expert in something. What is it that you do, Mr. Mazan?
I have no idea. I do a lot. I will say there's a lot that I do, but expert has never been applied to any before any of the things I do.
Would you say that you're an expert in talking with a microphone?
We'll see. I guess
hopefully
we'll see. Let's make that decision at the end. 59
minutes. So for those people who aren't familiar with you and how you fit into this community, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so actually, professionally, I'm a stand-up comedian, also a writer. I've written for TV, so I've done that for 20 years. And how I fit into this community is I'm a carcinoid tumor survivor as well. I was diagnosed in 2005 and had stage 4 cancer, spread from my intestines to my liver, and was given a worst case scenario at that time in 2005 of 5 years to live. And luckily, here we are 10 years past that worst case scenario. So that's how I fit into the community. And have kind of, as probably most of us, brought into this community not knowing a lot about it in the beginning, and it being a big surprise brought to the community. And it's been one of those things that's kind of all the friends and experts that I am not, and that I've met along the way have become friends. And it's been one of those things I never would have planned my life like this. It's enriched it in ways that I never could have imagined. So, yeah.
That I've actually heard that sentiment shared before as well. So everybody at home, I think today is going to be really unique because I'm interested in learning a little bit more about Steve's story. I know a little bit because I spent some time with him a couple of years ago in his home territory and interviewed him and captured his story a little bit. But for you all at home, I think it's going to be really interesting and unique because of what you just said, Steve, about this diagnosis that they gave you, kind of this like life sentence, which ultimately wasn't true, thankfully.
Right.
And I want to learn, and I expect that the people at home watching would want to learn, how that journey was for you, like not knowing what this was and getting, that kind of news. So we'll put a pin in that for a moment. And I've got a little bit more housekeeping, but that's that's really everybody watching. I think that's going to be a great opportunity for you to really talk to a patient that got some pretty heavy news and how, you know, he navigated that and the things he learned along the way. So go ahead and send in your questions if you have them. We're going to be chatting and rapping for the next 55 minutes rather. And so join us and let us know if you have any questions about Steve's journey, about your own journey that may reflect some of the things that Steve has gone through. Or if you just want to make him tell jokes for the next 50 minutes, we got him. We might have to pay him a little bit for that. So just know that, you know, often with these programs, we get a lot of questions. So if we don't get to your question, or if your question is something that is too case specific, or you just need a little bit more guidance or have further questions afterwards, please reach out to Carcinoid Cancer Foundation, either here on their Facebook page, you can send them a private message, or their website at carcinoid.org. And also, please know that if you want to refer back to this video at any time, it will be evergreen. It'll live here permanently on the Facebook page of CCF under the videos tab. And then starting Monday, we will republish it to YouTube for anyone that you know that may want to watch that doesn't have Facebook. And finally, before we get started, I just want to say we at the foundation want to say that we know how challenging it can be to be a patient, net patient, a person seeking diagnosis, a patient in the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot happening right now, and we just want you to know that we are here for you whenever, however you need us. And we hope to continue creating programs like this that help you through your journey. And if you'd like to help us continue to do that or reciprocate that in any way, an easy way to do that is with a donation. And an easy way to do that is by texting the word experts to the number 1-914-380-7323. Again, that's texting the word experts to 914-380-7323. Every donation really does make a difference. And that being said, with things like that, if I mention resources or Steve mentions resources today, we've got people in the back end, the home team of CCF, that will try to add those resources in the comments. Okay, so Steve, the first thing I want to ask before we get going is, you know, I know what you do, and we talked briefly the other day. This is a time where we're all struggling and having to pivot. You know, myself, I mean, everybody, I think, is a pretty safe bet to say, as a stand-up, you know, I actually have a trip to LA coming up, and I always like to go see some shows while I'm there. Well, guess what? There are no shows open. I mean,
Right.
maybe I can go get a bite to eat somewhere, but I'm
Maybe.
not going to a bar and I'm not going to a comedy club. So, dude, how has this affected your life and your livelihood more specifically? What have you done to pivot?
Yeah, well, I think like you said, everyone's pivoting right now, and even as you were just talking about like managing this, like the diagnosis now, like if you know, I was talking about 2005 getting the diagnosis, that it's a quagmire anyways getting through all that stuff.
Right.
I can't imagine trying to do it now amidst all this stuff, because it is literally
Crazy.
every single facet of life has changed because of this quarantine and how you can manage it. You know, I'm sure everyone who's going to a doctor during this, all this kind of thing. The other day, I had to go to a doctor. It wasn't even my oncologist, just a normal checkup. And
Right.
some lady was coming in with her mother, bringing her mother to it, and her mother, you know, wasn't like in a wheelchair or anything like that, but just needed a little extra help. She was older,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, like her coming in now, then they're like, well, you can't wait with your daughter. We can only have, if you're a caregiver, you can drop her here, but then you know how it is when you're in the doctor's office, every 2 seconds they're sticking their head out the window, like, now we need you to fill this out. Do you have your card on this? So I kind of jumped in, was helping her, but because they sent the daughter out, the daughter couldn't stay with the mom because of the quarantine and the COVID. Like, it's just a rule they have. So I can't even imagine going through all this now. What a craziness it is. But yeah, so it seems silly for me to complain, but I guess that's what I'll do, because that kind of pertains to the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
My job, like everyone else's, and my life, has been turned upside down. But prior to this, as a comedian, I was performing in comedy clubs, traveling the country, performing at corporates, doing talks, you know, that kind of thing, working with companies, doing cruises, going on cruises and doing comedy.
That's
and
cool.
every single one of those things as of March, you know, just completely, you know, the brakes on, shut down. No cruises. Corporate companies have stopped all their corporate meetings where I would perform. Every comedy club shut down. That's slowly opening in some parts. I think
Mhm.
Chicago has been opening clubs. Some places in the Midwest. There's been a lot of the pivoting, like you said. That's what we're all doing now. Like how can we still go forward somehow? And so there's been a couple places that have been moved to outdoor shows or drive-in shows. I guess the drive-ins are coming back movie-wise even.
I've been seeing it.
Yeah, so they've adapted, a few places where there's a comedy show where people sit in their cars, and the comedian's way up at the front where the screen is, and people flash their lights or honk their horns if they think it's funny. And I don't know. I remember maybe that's the heckling. I don't know which one. If it's good honking or not good.
The lights is applause, and the horn is heckling.
The horn is like honking, right? You can't. This one time, you're not going to win that. Usually, you can win any argument with a heckler because you have the microphone. You
Right.
can't beat the car horn. I don't
Can't
think.
beat a horn.
Can't beat a horn. And then, the windshield washer. I think that's get off stage. I think if you get hit with that stuff, like leave, go.
I got you.
So yeah, I guess like everyone else, I'm married. My wife, same thing. She's had some craziness during this. That's been the one thing, though. I guess and we'll probably get into this on the cancer side. The one thing that ends up being the savior in all this is the routine. Like on one hand, it's like, oh my God, my life's just thrown in a ruin. 20 years of work just flushed down the toilet, and I don't know what's on the other side of it. I don't know if comedy ever comes back with the way
it was.
Cruises might be gone for a long time, because we saw what a cesspool of not disease, but I guess disease.
I mean, they already were, troublesome
anyway,
if someone
right.
if there was a stomach bug that went around,
That was a concern anyways. And now, something like this makes it even bigger. So who knows if they come back? Who knows how comedy clubs come back? So many people now are working from home. Corporations, I think, the same way when they come back from this. I don't think they'll have as many like, hey, let's get 500 people to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
And meet together. I think they'll do a lot more of this, the Zoom stuff. By the way, I forgot to I have an impression. I'm usually, you've seen some of my comedy. I'm not an impressionist usually, but I've been doing lots of Zoom meetings. This is my impression of my mom on Zoom. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Steve! Steve! Are you there? Steve?
Yeah, Mom, I see your head. Dude, that's so funny.
So yeah, I guess everyone's pivoting, and so that's the two things that somehow make me not panic and my heart jump out of my chest and be like, what's going on with the rest of my life now? Is A, that you have to get back in the routine. You got to figure out how to pivot and what to do, and luckily there's been enough of these, the Zoom shows and stuff that I performed on, and then that every single person in America and the world is dealing with the same thing. That somehow has made me feel better, like a community. Like, hey, right. I'm not the only one. It doesn't feel personal. It doesn't feel like the comedy gods have just shocked me with a lightning bolt. And
right. Yeah, exactly. Like, what? We decided you're not funny anymore.
Yes, exactly. The metaphorical windshield wipers are throwing me off.
I like this metaphor.
Yes, but everyone, you're doing it. Every single person you talk to has had to figure out their way during this, and so there's some, I guess, for lack of a better word, solace in that. There's almost something hopeful. Solace seems sad.
I understand. Solidarity, maybe.
Hopeful, yeah. Solidarity is probably
because I like when you said that. It's like, but it's not just me. Like, it's everybody.
Right, exactly.
Because what worries me, what concerns me, besides obviously the immediate tragedy that if someone is impacted or contracts COVID, is this lack of connection and community. You make people laugh for a living. I mean, that and I love comedy, and so being in that space where we're all together laughing at this person on stage, like, that's a moment, a human moment, right?
Yeah.
And I see it reflected in the community here, in the net community, and I see it every week in the comments, and that worries me, because I know how powerful the human connection is to growth, to hope, to these things we've already talked about, to seeing our way forward. And it does make me it makes me happy that it can still exist, because I know that that's problematic for all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we can still find it through this, because it's imperative. I hope that we can get back to the point, because we really need to see faces, and touch is such a big part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Hugging
know,
people.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, yeah, and you being in the crowd, sure, you can be, because a lot of my friends, I'm in the speaking business too, so a lot of my friends are professional speakers.
Yeah.
And sure, you can hit the points that usually work, but it's like when you don't have that immediate response, or nobody's gonna. It's not the same as feeling the energy
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
room when you're doing it over a computer, but it's what we've got right now. And so I think we need to hold on to it. And I really like what you said, and I think it pertains to the cancer journey as well, about routine. In my own journey, what I learned is just sometimes just having a routine leads you somewhere. It may not be the routine you stick to, but just having some discipline of like, okay, I'm going to do this. And that's always helped me. Is that something that you think grounds people? Like right now, everything's up in the air. And if you just get a cancer diagnosis, it probably feels the same way. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about that
Yeah.
concept of like routine and why it grounds you?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say it's a double-edged sword, because I hated the routine was the thing that twisted a knife in me
I
with
get
my
it.
cancer diagnosis at the beginning. So as anyone probably listening and diagnosed this with yourself, or the person you love that has it, and that's why you're interested in this community, you know what a shock, what a semi truck it is when this diagnosis comes in. And like everyone, it seemed like, oh no, other people have cancer. I see this in movies. I see it. Oh, I have friends, or that kind of thing. But it's not going to happen to me. And then when it does, your whole world is shook up. It's it's God giving you the windshield wiper, like, hey, you might be out of here. So you're thinking about all this stuff and how your life has been changed. And everyone comes around you, everyone who loves you. In this case, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, but at that time when I got the diagnosis, my family,
Mm-hmm.
my friends, everyone comes around you and is like, "Oh my God, this is awful," and they share the shock and the sorrow and everything with you, and it's awful, and you're like, you can't imagine what life is now, being diagnosed with cancer, and how you're going to go forward. And then a couple days after, your friends are like, well, I got to work. They're kind of gone. They got to go back to their routine. And a week later, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she was like, well, yeah, I can't be with you every time as you're going to all these tests. I have to work. There's so
Wow.
many
Yeah.
doctor visits you have to go to. I can't get off for every one of them, or I'm going to lose my job, and we're not going to have a place. And so then she's back at work a week later, and then so now I'm left a week or two after this diagnosis, and this whole feeling I'd never had before in my body of not knowing where life is going, if there even is a life coming. We're trying to navigate what we talked about at the beginning, this whole kind of idea of the doctors and the diagnosis, and are you making the right choices? What are all the resources you have? Trying to ingest as much of that so you can make smart choices. And it seemed like everyone who gathered around me in the beginning was slowly going away now, back to normal. Their life was back to normal. Their life was continuing while mine was at a standstill. And it twisted in me. I was like, oh my God, this routine that they're all going back to, I don't have that luxury anymore. Like, life is at a standstill till I figure this out, what's going to happen with my life. And then I hated that idea. And
Yeah.
then 3 weeks after, I was like, oh shoot, I have to pay bills.
Right.
Those are
Right.
still coming in. In fact, I slowly am having a bunch of doctor bills pile up now. I have to pay those. I got to get back to work. I got to stay in shape during this. I got to, still go shopping so that there's food in the fridge. I still have to walk dogs. I got to do all this. I got to call my mom the same, time of week and make sure she's okay during this. And we'll get to that, I'm sure, that idea of the people who are part of your diagnosis, that you forget sometimes it's not just you that
Right.
has that diagnosis.
Totally.
So the routine that I hated for everyone else, it ended up saving me, because it allowed me to get back into something.
Mm-hmm.
It shocked me out of it, and was like, well, yeah, you still have to do all these things. You can't just wallow in it either. So in some ways it saved me, and it's the same thing kind of with this quarantine on a much less, well, on a much less personal level now.
Sure. But a grander,
sometimes because it doesn't seem like, when you hear a doctor give you an end diagnosis, maybe we haven't all specifically got that, but people are we all know people now who are dying from this. So it's maybe nonetheless scary or
sure.
Maybe less pressing just because it doesn't feel as personal,
Yeah.
but it's still there. And I think the routine is the thing that saves us a little bit too. Like, okay, there's still things that need to be done. And look, comedy, that's one of the things I learned about comedy in these 20 years doing it. People always ask, it's a cliche, laughter is the best medicine. Mm-hmm. And it's not. Penicillin, I think, is actually the best medicine. It's probably something better. Don't go to your doctor, not me, when you get sick. Because laughter helps for sure, 100%. That I know for sure it helps. It's not the best medicine, but it's a reset button for your soul. You know what I mean? Like, I see it when people come into a comedy club, and I've luckily done over a dozen trips to the Mideast to perform with groups. I really saw it there. Because in comedy clubs, most of the comedy clubs are there to, sell nachos and beer and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're performing so they can sell that stuff. But in a place like the Mideast where you perform with troops, it's literally about just the comedy. You're there to make them laugh for a while. They're not trying to sell anything to any of these people. Yeah. It's literally just about the comedy and laughter. And so you see these guys come in. We got to do some shows where these men and women had just returned from a mission, and you can see that kind of, the 1,000-yard stare where they don't even know where they're at. And they've been in this place far from home for a long time. They've only seen other people dressed in the same, camouflage that they're in. They've seen some awful things, and you're trying to make them laugh, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And then slowly you can see it kind of slowly wash away, and maybe there's a half smile, and then and then all of a sudden it's just, it doesn't completely wash away. And I'm not silly enough to believe that it's solving everything, but it's giving them a nice reset button that, hey, oh my God, here's someone who's not wearing camouflage. Here's someone who's talking about life back home that I've kind of forgot about because I've been stuck in this for a while. And you can slowly see like that wash away. And for an hour, then they at least forget whatever problems they have. And sure, those things are there when the comedy show's over, but maybe they look at them at a different perspective, or they can approach them with a fresh start because of that. So I think that's what comedy does. And just to that point, what we were talking about, the routine of stuff, the things you have to do, like I said, after a diagnosis, still having to work, still having to go grocery shop, still having to walk the dogs, all those things, that routine at least shocks you out of, I'm going to sit here and wallow in my own self-pity, this diagnosis that I got. So that stuff is invaluable as as silly and minor as it all seems. Those little things, those little traditions, I guess, that we have, that we take for granted or sometimes hate, are also the things that save us.
I really love that line. Laughter is a reset button for the soul.
Yeah.
And I think, it makes sense with the military, because they have to be somewhat detached to focus on the mission at hand. And so you almost bring that humanity back, a little bit, and like you said, like there's a little smirk, and then it starts to grow.
Yeah.
I feel like, that might be the same for patients. At first, when you're in that fear zone, you may be a little detached. And so bringing them kind of back down to reality is a good way to proceed forward. I want to take a few questions from the audience, just because, I could talk to you for, for an hour easily. Yeah. We actually have one from Sharon, who says, hello from Long Island. Same diagnosis 5 years ago. So she's just sharing that, but it makes me think of the question. I want one, what did it feel like to hear, hey, 5 years? And then two, what would you say to someone who hears that, like Sharon? Because that's got to be, it's the C word is scary enough, right? But then for them to put a timeline on it, oh my goodness! So how did you feel psychologically when you heard that? And then do you have any advice for somebody else who's hearing a similar thing?
Yeah. Share a little bit of that part of my story for that, because it'll maybe help a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Is my girlfriend, again, who's now my wife. She was my girlfriend of about 8 months at that point. So I can't even imagine, we were both in our mid-30s when this happened. And now she's hearing that the person that, we were in love for sure after 8 months, but she's got to decide if she's going to go forward with someone who's got.
Yeah, because it's still pretty early. 8 months is not like you're not married. I mean, it's not like.
Yeah. I seem like a nice guy, but I think if the roles were reversed, I would have been gone. I'm going to be honest. But I'm just saying, it takes a special person to stay with someone through that. I mean, there's
100%.
I love you. I've known you for 8 months. There's I love you enough to maybe set my life up with you when you might not be here in 5 years. That's
scary, man.
A big weight to put on stuff. And what we touched on earlier, that the diagnosis isn't just for you, it's for everyone involved with you, your circle. But so I went in, I originally went in for appendicitis. They thought I had, that's what I went in for. And then I woke up and that doctor was gone. And there was a guy who introduced himself as an oncologist when I woke up. So I knew something was up. And they said, yeah, your appendix ended up being fine, but we removed it. But we found, while we were in there, we saw tumors all over your liver. We're going to run tests on those. So after, a month of trying to look everywhere for the origin of those tumors, they eventually found it deep in my intestines. And then I live near UCLA here in Los Angeles, and I was lucky to be a part of kind of a team at the beginning of doctors. So there were 6 people, which helped because you get a lot of different opinions on things. You get people who are like, no, we need to go at this right now. I've heard about this experimental thing, and I think you're perfect for it. And then the oncologist that I had was much more like hey, we don't know everything about this. And again, this is 15 years ago, and that's the big thing I would say. Doctors are always learning. Everything they know now is going to be very different in 5 years, especially with this. Carcinoid tumors are not as rare maybe as they thought they were 15 years ago, but they're still a relatively rare tumor, and especially everything we know about it, is growing exponentially every day. So at that time, I had 5, 6 doctors on a panel, and every one of them giving us a different plan of attack of what we should do on this. And during that, so this is again just I know the diagnosis that I have the tumors on my liver, and that we know it's now in my intestines. That's where it came from, and how are we going to do this? And that's when one of them just kind of offhandedly said, listen, we don't know a lot about this. This is relatively rare, but the good news is, you could, maybe live. We know some people have lived 10, maybe 15 years with this, and it, me and my girlfriend kind of looked at each other like at then, and we were like, well, that's the first time we've heard a number, and it was very casual. It wasn't like him looking; he was just talking aloud to each other. And then we realized we hadn't asked the question yet. We realized he was being kind of optimistic here. So the way he was like, could be, hopefully, maybe some people have lived 10 or 15 years with this. And so then we were like, well, wait a second. You sound like you're being, hopeful on this. What do you mean 10 or 15?
Yeah. What's the other side?
Yeah. What are you saying? And that's when, they all kind of looked at each other and maybe realized, we're talking casually about this, but the patient's right here.
Yeah, I'm right here, guys. Right.
What's he been told? What hasn't he? These are things the doctors amidst themselves haven't talked. Like, tell us every single thing you've said to him so far. So then they kind of look at each other and they're like, look, we don't know everything about this, but for someone your age and what the number of tumors and where it's at, what we've seen so far, the worst case scenario is probably 4 or 5 years. And then now that's the big punch, like where you're like, oh my God, that's 5 years. And so that's kind of that was almost even more than the cancer. The cancer is like a question mark, but the number to it felt like a exclamation point. You know what I mean? Of like, now that's real. Because the cancer is like, oh, you have this, but let's figure it out, and who knows. And we've all heard the stories or seen a movie about someone who gets a diagnosis and they live much longer, or this kind of thing. So you're hopeful on your own, but when a number finally came out and it was like, whoa, this could be this bad, then it was like, oh geez, it very all of a sudden made it very real, where you start looking, you put a real timeline to it, like, oh wow, I might only have 5 years to live. And I'm, again, not a worst case scenario guy. I didn't, think, okay, well, they're definitely right on this, but they're all smarter than me. They all know much more about this than I do. So you have to at least listen to them and consider that. And again, looking back now, they were luckily for me wrong. The tumors I have grown very slowly in that time, and that's who knows why that is. I mean, some of it's just luck. Some of it's just luck of the draw of the tumors I got. Some of it's the choices I've made since. But you never get a thing. I remember we tried everything. My girlfriend and now my wife. At the beginning, we were doing every, cancer cleanse we could read about. We were doing, all these Eastern, medicine kind of things. We had, again, had a team of doctors who were suggesting all these things. So we tried everything in the beginning. But the problem is when you try everything, you don't know what's working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do we have to do all these 9 things? Do I have to do yoga twice a day for the rest of my life? Do I have to do this master cleanse thing? Do I have to do, all these stuff? See this, this Maori healer? Was he the guy who's made it better? Who knows? Or again, was it just luck? Were my tumors going to grow this slow no matter what? So I guess the only thing I say is the power of hope is the greatest thing. Because again, it's. Why wouldn't you don't know anyways. The doctors are only giving you their best estimate from what they know. And we know that again, every 5 years, there's a giant leap in this stuff and they learn so much more about it. So they don't know everything. They're just taking an educated guess at it. And you're better off to be hopeful. And it's the reason of why not be happy in a situation? Well, does it improve it? Does it make it better? That's a lot of people say sometimes, just like the humor cures everything, or laughter is the best cure. They also say, having the right attitude that's what makes all the difference. I don't know. I've seen some people with a pretty crappy attitude who've lived a pretty long life, and
that's true.
Some people who have the right attitude and are like, I'm going to beat this and blah blah, and holy cow, they've gotten, not to be macabre, but a big smackdown from cancer, and they didn't make it. And so I think it's unfair to say it's just about that, because it's not. There's a lot of luck and timing to it all on the advances that they make and who you're working with. But to that point, I always think if I only had 5 years to live, why wouldn't you want to live that as a hopeful person anyways, rather than a bitter give up person? So. That's to what we talked about at the very beginning. That was the switch that flipped over in my life, is that in some ways it improved things. It made me live life a little differently because it was more valuable. Your perspective has changed. So whatever time it was I had left, I wanted to live a certain way. I didn't want to live like I had all the time in the world and like, that can wait anymore. I turned, amp things up. I married my girlfriend, of 8 months. I turned the things up in my career. I chased a bunch of dreams that I had and thought I had plenty of time to get. Yeah. I all of a sudden started chasing those, and my life was better for that.
Yeah.
So again, for that reason only, wouldn't we all want to go through life like that? Shouldn't that be the goal anyways?
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. I hope everything's going okay with you. A couple more questions, Steve, from Dorothy. Basically, she's asking, do you still have symptoms, and how often do you still get scans? And so they tell you 5 years. It's now been 15. What's the current state of things?
Yeah. So luckily, I'm still here, and I do get scans. In fact, I'm due for scans right now. I go next week and talk about the advancement. That's the great thing. They have some new scans now that are, leaps and bounds above the stuff they were taking, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so now they can, if they can get, the magnification and the technology can get in so much more that they can tell the growth on this stuff. For a while, it was like, basically a little better, maybe like in an MRI, some of the scans where they're like, okay, it looks like there's some growth on one of your tumors. Another one looks like it might have shrinked. And then as, again, it's the things we're all navigating here. As I talk to more doctors and oncologists, and, my oncologist retired and I started with another one, they start looking at these same scans and they're like, well, it just might be the angle. We can't tell that. Maybe the technician didn't have you stage right, so maybe the angle makes it look like it grew, and this one looks like it shrunk because of that, like that kind of thing. So that's one of the things I'm talking about advancement-wise. Now they have technology that's way better, that it can zoom in even further, and the clarity is much better. So that stuff that's another reason to be hopeful. Things are always improving, and again, you think about breast cancer back in the 80s. I remember, like, if you got breast cancer in the 80s, that was the death sentence, right? Like, there was no, and now it's not. It's for some people it still is. I don't want to make that claim, but I'm saying it's a much more I don't know what the word is, navigatable, or people can live with breast cancer.
Right.
That was not the case before. And so I think on our tumors too, there's leaps and bounds at all times. So luckily for me, I'm just at the scan and blood work twice a year, scans once a year. But at the beginning it was 2-3 times a year, because they have that's at the beginning, it's all, they don't know what they have with you, as a patient. So it's all just like, let's get as much information on this person so we can compare it to what happens in 3 months and 6 months and 9 months and 12 months. And so as it gets further away from the initial diagnosis, they have a much bigger level of work. So symptom wise, I still just get some cramping. I didn't mention it, but I eventually had, from that team, I had surgery to pull out a chunk of my intestines. That was the origin, but I still have the same original tumors on my liver 15 years later. And they've luckily not grown much, and haven't affected my liver or anything else. But because of it, symptoms I had before the diagnosis that I didn't know were cancer related are kind of cramping in that area, from probably the tumors, butting up against other organs there, that kind of thing. And then flushing, which obviously is a big one for anyone with carcinoid tumors. So I get that, depending on, sometimes just on its own, sometimes depending on what I eat. And that was one of those things before the diagnosis. I assumed that the flushing was just that. Oh, I ate something wrong, and maybe it's like, that was too hot or something, even if it wasn't spicy. But I still have to deal with that stuff though. But very lucky, obviously. The beginning was, surgeries and treatments, and now it's just more upkeep to see where we're at. So,
and any other treatment since 2005, since the surgery?
Nothing. I've been very lucky. In fact, that panel, like I said, lucky in that angle too. I had a whole panel of people helping me out on what decisions to make. And you go with your gut at some level. There was an electrolysis study going on at the time, and there was a guy in that original panel of doctors at UCLA that was like, I think that he'd be perfect for this. We should get him to do this. And then another guy pulled me aside and he's like, hey, this is a new thing. And I heard a story about them trying the electrolysis, and it actually excited some of the tumors into growing more. So I would hold off on this. To the point I was just trying to make is, in the beginning, they don't know what they have either. They're just going on, what they've seen in other people, but each person is unique, and each tumor is unique. So they were making judgments on that based on other people. But as they slowly got more information on me, which is what my oncologist that I had at that time, and another one of the people on the panel was like, hey, you're new, and I know you want to take action, you want to seem proactive on this, but sometimes waiting and just getting more information is worth it. And so, of course, then getting 3 months and 6 months, 9 months and 12 months, probably in that first year, probably 4 rounds of scans, that gave him a lot more information. Like, hey, it doesn't look like his tumors are growing. Maybe we should wait a little rather than trying something that is new and experimental. And I don't even think that electrolysis thing is even around anymore. But at that time, it seemed like, to them, like, we've discovered this thing that might be great for these kind of tumors. So, obviously, in the end, I think you can only go with your gut and the people that you trust, and stuff like this, like hearing more stories. Again, those doctors are making educated guesses.
Yes.
So educating yourself, it helps a lot too, so that you can make those decisions and be like, oh, okay, I've heard similar. The more people you talk to, you'll end up, each person is unique, but you'll hear someone that has a very similar story to you, and then it'll help you navigate it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is one of the powerful things about storytelling.
Yeah.
Everybody, we are here with Steve Mazan. This is Luncheon with the Experts. We have about 20 minutes left, so get your questions in now. And you know what? If somebody else wants to be here, because we're very fortunate to have Steve with us today, go ahead and share this link. You can tag them, you can share this with them and let them know what's going on now. But if they don't make it, or you want to revisit any part of this, you can go to the Carcinoid Cancer Foundation's Facebook page and see the video here permanently on the Facebook page under the videos tab. And then also starting Monday, it will be on YouTube. We are grateful to have Steve here. We're grateful for you all at home. In fact, Ruby says, I've learned so much from these lunches. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ruby. We appreciate you being here. All right, get your questions in. We've got about 20 minutes left. Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
We've already kind of started down this path, and maybe you've told this story a lot, but look at the thumbs ups and hearts flooding in. Sorry, Steve can't see them, only I can, but I'm telling you, they're flooding.
I don't see any. I see this for some reason. There's a windshield wiper thing.
I just made a plug in really quick for Zoom, and it's just like, get him off stage.
Go.
I'm gonna run that metaphor into the ground. That was a good one. If nothing else comes out of today's,
we got that. We got the wipers.
Definitely. All right. So I want the people to hear about. You talked about, you get this diagnosis, it's scary, and you got the two options. Mm-hmm. Do I just give into it and say, oh, well, these are the cards I'm dealt? Or do I want to live, if that's true, do I want to live those 5 years with all I can in a hopeful way? And it sounds like you zeroed in focus on what matters the most. You know what? This woman I love, she's been by my side. We're going to make this official now. Yeah. These are the dreams that I had, that I thought, hey, I could take my time, but now we're zeroing, like we're hyper focused on these. Yeah. So tell me that part of your story that that dream that you wanted to fulfill, that you're known for, that people may not know that happened at that point. Like, what came into focus where you're like, you know what, now's the time. There's no playing around anymore. Yeah. If I want to make this happen, I got to do it now. Yeah. What happened after that point?
Well, that's you realize, again, when someone gives you, even though I'm not a worst case scenario guy, when someone says you may only have 5 years to live, and they have degrees on the walls, you have to right. At least consider that stuff, that person may be right. And so it was a shock. Like, oh, okay, there were a lot of things in life that I had said, oh yeah, I'll get to that. That's going to happen. So I use someday a lot because I've said it before. Someday is the most scheduled day of our lives, right? I'll do that someday. It's not on the calendar. So all of a sudden I had a possible thing that's on the calendar 5 years down the road that I might not be there. A very strange, deadline. There's a it's a literal deadline now that something might be happening where I might not be here anymore. So career-wise, so like I said, socially or love life wise, I ended up marrying the woman who was with me at that point. And Denise, that sounded very cold. The woman who was with me, she is my wife, Denise. I love her. I don't know why I made it sound so clinical there. The lady in my life at that point. She's awesome. And so I married her, and then career-wise, I had, like everyone, you just think there's plenty of time for stuff. Like, again, I was in my early 30s, mid to 30s at that point. I was 6 or 7 years into stand-up comedy as a profession there. I was making a living of that already, and that was great. And sometimes that's part of the thing too. When things are going good enough, you take your foot off the brake a little, or your foot off the gas rather. And mixing my metaphors. And so my dream, the reason I got into comedy in the first place was I am the hugest, this is going to be something I'm a relative expert in. David Letterman was my favorite late night show of all time. I loved him. I watched him all the time. My parents watched Johnny Carson. I loved him. And then some guy came on in the early 80s in a very formative time for me. After Johnny Carson, David Letterman came on. He was from the Midwest like me. He looked goofy like me. He wasn't as attractive as most of the other people you'd see on television. And he had a unique sense of humor, and my parents hated him, and that made me like him even more. And so and he had comics on that were not like the comics that were on Johnny Carson. They were a little different, and it was kind of a new sense of humor, and I fell in love with them. And I that was the reason I got into comedy. I was like, I'm going to be on that show someday. And so I was just the way life works is you go out and you get good at something and then word spreads. That's how my career had went. I got into comedy clubs and other things that way, as comedians would see me and be like, oh, you're really good. You should work here. You should work this place. So recommendations. And I slowly expanded things. And that's how I thought getting on the Letterman show would work. Is like, yeah, eventually they'll hear about me. That's way off in New York on the other side of the country. Someone will be like, hey, there's this guy way out in California that's pretty good. You should check him out. Well, now all of a sudden, that's how I was approaching life. And now all of a sudden it's flipped and I have this 5-year deadline. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be here when someday happens. Someday I'll get on the Letterman show. What if I'm not here for that someday? So I gave myself another deadline. That was that I was going to get on the David Letterman show. I gave myself a year to do it, and pulled out all the stops, called in everyone I knew who might know someone at the thing. I started sending Letterman company videos of my stuff. And this is prior to Facebook and Twitter and social media.
Right,
so,
right.
all the stuff you might do now. This was, a much more kind of.
Yeah, you couldn't slide into his DMs and be like,
there was
Dave.
none of that. Yeah, exactly. There was Twitter wasn't around, Facebook, nothing, YouTube. And so it was literally just people would see me at shows, and I was like, hey, if you really enjoyed me, this is my goal. I'm trying to get on the David Letterman show, and people would email them. That's what we would do for it. And at the end of that first year, guess what happened? Nothing. I didn't get on. But I gave myself, things were going. I felt great. Life was going great. I really felt like I had this goal in mind. So I extended it another year. I said, I'm giving myself another year. And then went at it even harder. And at the end of that second year, nothing. Didn't happen either. Neither, just more windshield wipers. In fact, even somewhere in the second year, I got a letter from the Letterman people saying, you will not be on the show. This is not going to happen.
What?
And almost basically a legal cease and desist, like, stop telling people to email us, like you're not.
That's wild.
But again, I think they just thought of it as like a Make-A-Wish thing. I don't think they understood that.
Oh, like, no. I'm a comedian. I've been a comedian.
I'm a comedian. I make a living doing this. And so it was just kind of, again, it's a different time. So again, there isn't social media where you can tell your story like you can now. I know you and I are both big storytelling fans. And so, and sharing your story and the sharing society that social media at its best is. And so again, it was somehow getting them to understand the story. Hey, like, I'm not asking this because I have cancer. I'm asking you to look at me only because I can't have you look at me in 6 years. I might not be here for that. So just please, I might not be right, but make it because of that, not because you think this is a wish thing. So I extended it, and it ended up taking almost the entire 5 years of the diagnosis to get the attention of the right people and to prove to them that this wasn't just a wish of a sick person, that kind of thing. But even I say it now, and I eventually did get on the David Letterman show, and you can see that on YouTube, and there's some other places, and we'll plug those so that you can kind of see the story of it all. How that all unfurled. But I swear to you, Raymond, I'm not saying this. It's easy to say things after it happened.
Yes.
Even if I had never got on Letterman, those 5 years were the best 5 years of my life, because I wasn't just waiting for things to happen and letting the routine go. And I was chasing. I was living life and going at it, and had a plan. And again, so even when the nose came in, it felt like all right, I knew what I had to do for the next thing. All right, prove this person wrong. Go that. Oh, they think this. So now you got to do this. Oh, okay, they don't like this joke. Well, fix that. Get this thing. So it was those 5 years were the best. It's so much better than the 5 years prior. And you would think, of course, you get a cancer diagnosis. Well, the things are downhill after that. It went uphill in some ways, in a lot of ways. Like I said, the perspective change is such a jolt to your life that you sometimes realizing. Your mortality is the, I hate to use the word gift, because I even have a joke about that. But one of my wife's friends at the beginning was like, oh, I think you'll look at cancer as a gift. And it was like a gift, like, well, lady, what do you, I don't want you to be my secret Santa at work. You're like giving people cancer. What? You got me cancer? Judy, you shouldn't have. Stop giving people cancer. This is the worst gift ever. Yeah. So, but I get the sentiment of it. You know what I mean? The perspective of it all is what's the saying? Like the the years are quick, but the days are long, and that kind of thing. So it's something like that.
The one it makes me think of is like, it's really an actual example of the saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Honestly.
if that, and I love that, it's true, but it's really hard to lean into that because we're all results driven and goals
Right.
driven. But I'm glad that you said that part. And I don't think that I've ever heard you say it like that, that even if I hadn't gotten Letterman, it still was the best 5 years of my life. The
100.
Letterman was just the icing on the cake, like the cherry.
Of course. Yes. And again, I don't want to take that away, but again,
No.
had it not happened, there's so many other things on that in those 5 years that I'm like, wow, this was an equal high to that. This was that. I learned so much about myself during it. That it just, again, it's easy when there is no, like I say about life. Sure, we all say life is short, but it's actually relatively long when you think about it. The years by life that you don't, some of the things we can put off. It's easy to procrastinate when you think of life. I've got plenty of time to do that. But having that deadline in the back of my mind, put things up, and it spiced life up in a lot of ways.
It's not so much about the achievement, but the alignment, it sounds like, right? Like you had this mission and it was purpose, right? It wasn't, it was routine and all this sort of stuff. And you were going somewhere. You had something you wanted to achieve, but it's the alignment that it required to achieve that produced the results, it sounds like. That's the first time I've thought about it like that, but I really like that.
Good way to put it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes left. LACNet says, we love Steve Mazan, don't we all?
Oh, awesome. I love that.
Look, we've got Bernard from Kenya. We've got South Africa in the house. Whoa. Look at us spreading our wings. Here's a question from Judy. Do you Ruby, yes, we talked about treatment already. No treatment since his surgery, but he still does get regular scans. Judy says, what is your diet? And this is something that comes up a lot too. Is nutrition a part of you living your best life in this? Is it something that you don't think about in the forefront of your mind? Where does that
it's always at the forefront of my mind, but I am there's such a dichotomy to getting this diagnosis, especially in the beginning. And my wife is a California girl. I'm from the Midwest. I'm a little more cynical. He's very, have you ever seen the show Dharma and Greg?
Yeah.
Our life's a little bit like Dharma and Greg, but funny. I'm sorry, that was mean for Dharma and Greg. That was a cheap joke. But anyway, she's just a very much like a spiritual hippie person. And like I said, I'm just a little bit of a cynical Midwest person. So we tried all these things in the beginning, like lots of cleanses, lots of diet stuff, lots of different exercise stuff, experimental stuff, different healing, stuff, Eastern medicine stuff, and along with the Western medicine, seeing my doctors and stuff. And so, of course, diet ends up being a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And I have roller coastered both ways on that. On one hand, I know it's like, okay, you may only have 5 years. Well, you better be very healthy for those 5 years and make sure diet wise. And we know that diet is a big part from what the doctors say about this of maintaining your health during this. And you just want the rest of your body to be healthy even besides that, so it can support whatever treatment you're getting. And so there's that angle. But I'm going to be completely honest. I also, as a human, have the angle of like, God, dang it, if I only have 5 years, if I'm dead in 5 years, I don't want to be like, that was one great grapefruit you had for breakfast. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have some pizza. I want to enjoy that 5 years. And so I go in and out of it. I'm right now, if you and I, when we met 3-4 years ago, I think I was probably 30, 35 pounds heavier than I am right now. I'm in a nice, like, taking care of myself.
There you go, buddy. I love it.
Right now. So I'm very happy with that. But I'm also not cocky enough to be like, this is how it's going forward. I know that I'm going to fall off at some point, and I'm going to be like, you know what? I need a lot of comfort food, and there's a lot of stress, especially now with this quarantine. And
dude, it's tough. It's tough.
Whatever. Sometimes you just need things to get through the day, and I'm not a proponent's not the right word of it. I understand that is what I'm saying. And life's still there. You still got to go over all these hurdles, and sometimes I'm a little fatter going over those hurdles. And that's
I can relate. Yeah.
what gets me through is a nice dinner with my friends and stuff like that, where I'm not worrying about like every little thing I eat. And sometimes I fall off the exercise regimen that I'm on. And so yeah, right now things are good. But to the person asking about diet, yes, there's plenty of things and plenty of smarter people than me that will tell you this is what you should be doing for your cancer. But listen, I ride the line both ways of like, okay, yes, you got to do the right thing because life is short and you want to stretch it out as much, but I also got to live. And so I'm gonna treat myself to those finer things. If you're not living, there's a great study I remember on the Asian culture that there's a somewhere near a little island off Japan, people have the longest longevity.
Oh, yeah.
They eat very little.
Yep.
It's not even what they eat, but they eat very little. Like, this kind of kernel 3 times a day. And so they're very no fat, no this. They're the healthiest people in the world. And the writer sums it up at the end. They're like, but is that how you want to live? You know what I mean? Yes. Like, who cares if you live 95 years?
Yeah.
You want to live 95 years and never have a deep dish pizza from Chicago and some ice cream afterwards. So, there's that balance of it. And,
balance is key.
I'm the walking version of that. Again, you'll see me in 7 months from now and I'll be 15 pounds heavier. and again, at some level, I'm always striving for this right now, being in shape and having a good diet, but I understand the ebb and flow of that. And again, that's the fun of life. You got to enjoy it too.
And for those out there curious, so we do have some videos on nutrition, and another project that I work with CCF on is our treatment-based videos that we have coming out that are produced videos, not like live conversations like this. We just released one last Friday on net guidelines, but we've got a whole new update of the original videos I did for CCF like 9 years ago. And so those are on the videos tab as well. We've got PRRT, we've got clinical trials, a lot of different ground that we're covering, but nutrition is another topic that we talk about a lot. So you can find some information on the YouTube channel or the videos tab. Hi from Australia. What's up, David? We really are reaching all over the world. Yeah, it's late at night over there. So a couple minutes left. We got time for a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Suzanne says, my husband received his diagnosis about 8 years ago. He is a confusing case to his doctors. And my question for Steve is, does he still suffer from fatigue? My husband is just exhausted all the time, and I'm curious.
Yeah, that is, the one thing on that, I definitely 100% yes. Fatigue, and you're talking about 8 years now. I'm talking about 15 years later. There's so much more. The same way I was talking about the diet and all the treatments that you might try at the beginning. You never know which of those work. There's also over 8 years and 15 years for me, just getting older. So you don't know how much of it ends up being like, hey, as you get older, you get a lot more fatigue than you used to. That starts happening. So my wife and I always say to each other, it's not going to get easier. You know what I mean? As you get older, as the years go by. And so the one thing that's helped me, especially this year, I will say, even more than the diet, is the exercise. Getting that routine, fighting the fatigue with tiring yourself out through exercise. As weird as that sounds,
right? But it works.
It works. It starts snowballing the other way, and you end up having more energy in the beginning, and it takes 2-3 months of some good exercise to get that snowball going.
Yeah, your body adjusts to expecting that kind of activity. So now you've ramped up the RPMs a little bit, basically.
100%. Yeah, it gets you're an engine, right? So yeah, it gets you burning off but you got to burn off all that stuff you put in the boiler there.
And try to put good fuel into the engine.
Yes,
try to put good fuel into the engine.
Yeah. So I'm sure he'll find that as well. That's the way to combat that.
We're really running close on time. I had one question. We'll try to answer quickly, but I just wondered, because you mentioned putting your dream out there.
Yes.
About Letterman. How big is that transparency to finding that alignment that you found? Just saying, you know what, because you got to be a little vulnerable to put those things out there.
100%. And I think that's the way. It's easy to trash all the social media. I know we all know the problems with social media, but I love the sharing idea of social media and that action of it. And we see more and more of these stories because of it. That's what I love about it. So yes, it's very vulnerable. When I grew up in the Midwest, and the whole idea was you don't talk about your dreams and stuff like that. You're
right.
like, I want to do this. Yeah, shut up. That's kind of the attitude. And but yes, putting it out there, it starts to hold you accountable because you put it out there. So you have to live up to it, or the chasing of it to yourself. You have to answer to yourself. You have to answer to your friends who know about it. And that sounds like a bad way, like answer, but it's just you'll interest other people in your dream, and you make the connections is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
You start saying like, oh, I want to chase this dream. I have to get on Letterman. All of a sudden, some person I've never met hears about it from the third person I told about it.
Yep.
So all of a sudden I make connection, and then that person says, oh, you know what? I happen to have the email of the people at Letterman. You know what I mean? Like, whereas if you just kept it to yourself and you're just trying to do it yourself and don't tell anyone, you know what I mean? It's a spread. Nothing gets accomplished by yourself. Nothing.
And you have to trust that journey, because you don't know when that connection is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you know what I mean? It happens in these ways you don't expect it to.
100%. And those connections are a nice, sweet reward on it. Even if they don't pay off in the way you think, the way they pay off in the ways you never expected are a great thing. The friendship, the humanity you see in strangers is amazing.
Absolutely. Real quick before we go, Jolene says, Okinawa, I lived there.
Awesome. Okinawa.
Yeah. And I have to say, Kathy says hello from Sleepy Hollow, which just seems appropriate for Halloween time.
Don't lose your head, Kathy.
Sorry, that might have been a bad joke, Kathy. But, we're here with comedians. Everybody, that is our time today. I just want to say before we go, there's a couple things I wrote down that I want to reiterate that came from Steve. Laughter is a reset button for your soul. Love that line. And so that's something I would encourage as a patient, as a person in COVID times. Seek out ways to make that connection and laugh a little bit. It's not the best medicine, but it is a reset button for your soul. And then also,
can I just on top of that say, for anyone new to it, and I know there's a couple of you ask questions like, hey, just got diagnosed. Don't be afraid to laugh at it. So there's so much humor, and it's a great thing whenever I work at one of these conferences doing a comedy show for other cancer patients. Everyone's laughing about it. It takes the power away to laugh at your own experience of it, and your experience with the doctors and the health system and stuff like that. It can all, when you start
scary,
laughing,
a monster.
Yes, it is a monster.
And if you laugh at a monster, it reduces it.
Yes.
Dude, look at you with the gems today, man. I love that so much, man. I'm going to use that too. Maybe I will quote you, but I'm still stealing it. But another one that Steve said was someday is the most, and I might be paraphrasing, but someday is the most scheduled day on the calendar. I'll do it someday. I'll do it someday. Guys, do it today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Steve. This was
thanks for having me. I love this. It was a fun lunch hour.
It really was. It flew by. And thank you to you all at home, as always. And we hope this program has helped you. And please reach out to ccf@carcinoid.org if you have further information or any other questions. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Tricera Therapeutics. Without them, this program would not be possible. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for watching. Join us next time on Luncheon with the Experts. Stay healthy. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.